Well, Neil, thank you very much for speaking to us today. As we speak, the World Championship's on the horizon. How are you feeling?
Yeah, really good. Practice has been going very well. In fact, actually made back-to-back 147s today, playing mate of mine, Ryan Thomason, in practice. And so he's getting his practice ready for Q school, and I'm getting ready for the World. So yeah, we've had a couple of good hit outs, and yeah, nice to kind of be in, heading into the World Championships. Just winning the Tour Championship a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I feel as though I've come down from that, and I'm getting ready to peak again for the Worlds.
That doesn't sound too bad. Back-to-back 147s in practice today, and you've just won the Tour Championship, of course. I suppose there are worse ways to prepare for the World Championship.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so yeah, it was ideal really having the Tour Championship, and then a couple of weeks off before the Worlds. Not having to, because usually we're coming back from China around this time of year, and you don't have much time to recover before the World. So I think the fact that we haven't had any flights for quite a long time, everyone I think will be feeling really fresh going into it, especially the top 16.
Well, definitely. And as for yourself, just speaking about that Tour Championship victory, obviously you beat the creme de la creme to go all the way. Obviously, Jack Lazowski 10-5, Mark Selby 10-3, Ronnie O'Sullivan 10-4. You must have taken so much confidence from that.
Yeah, it was definitely the best I've ever played in a tournament from start to finish, and such a prestigious event like that where it's just the top 8 in the world, and just based on this season's performances. So every player would have been going in feeling as though they had a realistic chance of winning it. And yeah, the players that I beat along the way certainly sort of justified that reason why I felt as though it was the best I've played in the tournament. I think I had like 11 centuries in the tournament, and yeah, so that was fantastic. The scoring was good. Played every match on my terms, and yeah, it's the sort of thing I need to do more often in the World Championship.
And the manner in which you achieved those victories as well, it's not like you were just scraping over the line. You were beating them comfortably, weren't you?
Yeah, I was scoring well. My safety was really good. My safety was very aggressive at the right times, where I put a lot of pressure on my opponents long potting to make sure that every kind of ball they attempted, they knew if they missed, they were going to be leaving me in. So that was actually, I think that was the key more than anything. I think my scoring is always good. It was just about sort of creating the really good scoring opportunities for myself once I created a mistake.
Well, you certainly did that. And, well, you've generally performed well in the bigger events this season. Obviously, you also won the UK Championship, got to the final of the Champion of Champions. And that's what you want, isn't it, coming into the season's climax at the Crucible?
Yeah, usually someone who, someone you associate with being a world champion is someone who certainly performs on the biggest stage in the biggest events. And I think that's certainly been true over the last maybe sort of like 20 years or so, if you look at all the winners who have won it. So, to go in winning two of the arguably the biggest 3 events so far this season, I think will certainly hold me in good stead for the challenges of, the 17 days potentially at the World Championship.
And you're in action on the very first day as well. Obviously, we're still awaiting the identity of your opponent as we speak, but Saturday afternoon, you're playing your opening session. Is that how you prefer it, or would you prefer to come into the tournament a bit later in the week?
I don't know, really. I guess maybe you feel as though you like to see the tournament unfold a little bit for a few days, but yeah, it's nice to play early on, because then if should you progress, and you've got 3 or 4 days back home before you have to go up again. So you get to sort of go back home, practice on your own table and stuff like that. So I think that's quite nice too. But yeah, I don't think there's any kind of favoritism in terms of the results based on the draw. Yeah, the winners have come through all sorts of different parts of the draw, but yeah, it's quite nice to be playing on the opening day. I quite enjoy that. It's happened a few times, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I play over 2 days, which is interesting. I think a best out of 19 over 2 days isn't really quite the same as playing it over one day. So yeah, it's important to stamp your authority early on in the match.
Well, definitely. And you're going there off the back of consecutive appearances in the quarterfinals the past couple of years, and you've on both occasions, it's fair to say you've come up against players in inspired form in John Higgins and Mark Selby. So although you'd have obviously liked to have gone further than you did, good momentum really the past couple of years. So just looking to build on that this year.
Yeah, showed a lot of good signs, and last year and the year before, I looked like doing really well, and came across two of the greatest. I guess you could say sort of like best, match player kind of, defensive players really, where they just give nothing away and allowed both of those matches to fall away a little bit, where I kind of felt as though I wasn't really playing the match on my terms. So that was one takeaway to have, especially from last season. Coming into this season where I've played really well, and a large part of the season I've played certainly on my terms. So it's just important to do that, because there's nothing worse losing like the way I did last year, where I felt as though I completely played it on my terms. It wasn't really an enjoyable match, and it certainly wouldn't have been very enjoyable to watch, because there's a lot of frames to it for like 30-40 minutes. Whereas if you look at when we played in the Tour Championship, there are very few frames over 20. So that's a key for me, just to play open, quick frames. Yes, I can grind it out when I need to in certain frames, but the importance is certainly on the attacking play.
Well, absolutely. And in terms of general aims for the tournament, I suppose it's the same for everybody, and everyone will say, it's very much one ball at a time at the World Championship. You never look too far ahead of yourself, but whichever way you look at it, I guess you just can't wait to get started now. Yeah,
it's. I think that's the fact that we've got a crowd, even though it's still a reduced crowd, it's still great to actually know that we're going to be going out to a crowd. It's going to be interesting to see how certain players handle that. And I really felt for the debutants last year who never got to go out to a Crucible crowd, because walking down those steps for the first time, I'll always remember it when I played Stephen Hendry when he was world number one. That was my first appearance at the Crucible. The crowd and everything was amazing. So hopefully this year, with even with the reduced crowd, it can still create a great atmosphere for those guys. Should there be any debutants that qualify.
Well, we keep our fingers crossed. And just a quick additional question. Obviously, one of the big stories of the qualifying so far, the retirement of Alan McManus, obviously a very, very popular guy on the tour. And obviously sad to see him leave the sport, I suppose, but his contribution to the game's far from over.
No, that's right, and he's got really heavily involved in the doing the commentary and the punditry work, and he's absolutely fantastic. I always love listening to him in the commentary box. He explains things so well, and especially because he's been on the tour for so long, and also kept up to date with the current crop of players. He doesn't really have too many dated opinions. He's very up to date with things, and his knowledge. There aren't many more people who've got as much knowledge as what he has in the game. And he's been a wonderful player for a very, very long time. He had to compete and graft through, one of the toughest eras in snooker with Stephen Hendry in the 90s. If he probably, Stephen Hendry probably wasn't playing then, maybe Alan probably would have won a world title. So, I think I'll always remember Alan actually at my dad's club, that a Scottish guy had a VHS tape of the Masters final between Alan McManus and Stephen Hendry. He used to play it all the time in my dad's club, and that were kind of like my first memories of watching snooker. Really, was watching Alan McManus break Stephen Hendry's winning record at the Masters, and when he won the final. So I kind of knew of Alan McManus even before I knew of players like Ronnie O'Sullivan and John Higgins.
And you said there, obviously, made the point, he came through in an era where you got Stephen Hendry, Steve Davis is still up there. So unlucky maybe not to win a couple more tournaments. But the fact that he managed to beat Stephen Hendry in a Masters final, I think he'd been unbeaten at Wembley up to that point as well. That fall if you're doing that.
Yeah, and I think it was 20 odd consecutive matches in a row Hendry won. So and for Alan to break that, and it's winning the Masters is one of the real big ones, isn't it? So I'm sure he still looks back onto that day with great memories.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, Neil, but just coming into my head now, I'm sure you beat him on the way to your first ever ranking title at the Grand Prix. I think it was the semi-finals, something like that.
Yeah, it was the semi-finals. Yeah, I beat him. think it may have been 6-3 in the semi-finals. And yeah, that's right. Yeah, we haven't. Funnily enough, we're not played very often at all against each other. Maybe only played 2 or 3 times maximum throughout our career, I think. So yeah, it's funny that how we've always managed to kind of avoid each other in the draws. It's yeah, it's weird. There's always a few players like that you never really play too often for one reason or the other.
I mean, obviously you came through that meeting that we've just mentioned, but you know, even though it was only a couple of times you maybe played him, I imagine that even then his class was evident and what he could bring to the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the best safety players we've ever had. You know, he was probably partly the reason why, you know, John Higgins was so good in the safety department and stuff like that, and you know, Stephen Maguire, Graham Dott, these kind of guys. So yeah, Alan's got an awful lot of knowledge that he's been able to pass on, and hopefully that he continues to do so, especially with the punditry work, because you know, as a young player, if you watch the matches and you listen to the really good experienced pundits, there's a lot to pick up on if you're concentrating and making sure you're listening to what they're saying.
And he is, in terms of his punditry as well, obviously, as you say, the general standard is obviously very high, but he's on another level. The depth that he goes into, the knowledge that he does bring to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think I'm sure that a lot of younger players coming through are certainly taking note of that, because you know, the knowledge he has and the way he explains coming out of snookers and thinking 2 or 3 shots ahead in the safety department. Not many people think of that. A lot of people talk about break building, thinking 2 or 3, 4 shots ahead. But where, you know, the really good safety play, especially amongst top players, you're always thinking 2 or 3 shots ahead to try and manipulate the balls in a certain way where you can trap them and create a frame winning opportunity through safety. You know, you don't always have to do it through knocking it like a really good long red.